Yeah, it's a super interesting question. I think research is always one of those things that people don't really assume as part of the creative process. And the more that my career has progressed, and the more that you see what's happening in culture, and the more that you see that the way that the advertising industry behaves, you realise just how crucial research is, because research points to insight, points to what people are about, points to what audiences care about. And it points to the changes in culture that we're all trying to react to from a brand point of view. So that's always been something that for me has kind of been top of mind. And I started off in advertising doing kind of account management roles. But I realised that the part that I really enjoyed was actually going out and speaking to people, finding out about their lives. And naturally that sort of interest just extended into what then became kind of a fully fledged research role. In traditional advertising agencies, you don't really have a research department. You kind of have planners, and research agencies sort of sit very separate to that. So I think that's probably why people don't really think it's part of the creative industry, but it's very much the starting point of that process. And for me, like doing those roles in advertising agencies, I realised that was the bit that I really wanted to do. So I kind of moved over into a specialist kind of research brand consultancy sort of agency, really just to hone the skills in, and now taking it back to a sort of more creative side. There's a sort of missing piece in between those roles and in that process in advertising agencies where research very much sits in silo. And what I'm trying to do now is bring more creatives into the research process. I think it's quite easy to think that research isn't a creative role, but there's so much creativity to it. So the more that we can encourage people to kind of think about it in that way and see it as a creative role, I think the better. I think it naturally extends from like who I am as a person. If you're coming from a place where you're kind of two or more cultures, like you're constantly thinking about your own place in different cultural spaces, and you're constantly thinking about identity, and you're kind of constantly thinking about who you are. And that's just like a natural curiosity. Like I'm always asking questions. I'm always asking questions about myself, but I'm also always asking questions about other people as well. So I think like that's just been a natural part of the way that I interact with people and the way that I see the world. So finding a role that actually enables me to kind of be paid to be curious is kind of what research is for me. Yeah. I think I've been really lucky to have, I'll describe them as mentors. So people that I've been lucky enough to work with at various creative agencies who I've really looked up to, and they've really helped kind of shape and inform my sense of kind of where I wanted to go. I think it's important to sort of think that, or something that I've realised is that when you start out, you don't really know what it is that you want to do. There's a lot of experimenting, and within the creative industries themselves, there's a whole spectrum of roles that you don't learn about when you're at school. And it was only when I actually started working in the industry that I started to realise maybe I could do this, maybe I could do that. But the people that really helped me steer that thinking were kind of managers who I guess kind of see what you're about and can see your potential, and then they sort of open up that conversation like very gently, just sort of starting to get you thinking about where you could potentially go. So my advice for kind of senior managers now, I think for me, when I think about the kind of young talent, it's not about experience or lack of experience. It's purely about potential. It's about what they represent. It's about the kind of potential of what they could inject into a team or a business from the point of view of culture. And I think quite a lot of the time, especially with young talent, we don't realise the value that we can add to a team or to an organisation because we've never been made to feel that value. But I also think there's a problem at a higher level where people don't quite know how to harness that value. They don't quite know how to work with what's before them, especially with the younger generation who are so much more aware, passionate, ready, nuanced in the way that they think about themselves and the world. Like these are all skills and perspectives that the creative industry desperately needs. So I think in the first instance, it's sort of about being open to that potential and then creating a space whereby you allow it to flourish. One thing that I think for me personally has always been like a challenge is confidence and creative confidence and thinking about yourself as a creative person. I think especially when you're in school, people kind of tend to tell you what you're good at and what you're not good at. And I think that's wrong. And I think everybody kind of going back to that point around creative potential, but everybody has that. And I think that's something that it's taken me kind of 3, 4, 5 years to get to a point where I'm starting to understand my own creativity and how I can be confident in that in the workplace. And then carrying that out into my personal life as well. It's like, I always told myself I didn't want to be one of those people that was guilty of having loads of ideas but never did anything about it. And it's getting to the point now where I'm actually starting to execute and externalize those ideas, but I'm doing that with the help of people that I've met along the way throughout the creative industries who are helping to support and build those ideas. And I think that's one thing that I would say as well, is like, it's so important to surround yourself with people who are good for you. And are going to build you up and are going to support you creatively. Because in the industry it can be very sort of distracting. You can kind of see what other people are doing and feel like maybe you're not kind of at that level, but the focus should always be on yourself and how you're building your own sort of output. So yeah, not to get distracted and to kind of focus on your own sort of growth, I think is something it's hard to do, but I think it's really important to do. I think if you're a young creative looking to step into the industry, the kind of characteristics that people are looking for are things like proactivity, originality, by which I mean a unique point of view. Like, I'm always wanting to meet and be around people who don't necessarily have my background, who are able to kind of broaden my sort of understanding of the world and of people. So if you feel like you've got a unique point of view, like, always bring that forward and never kind of think that that's wrong. So I'd definitely say originality. I think like an analytical mind, like someone who's able to kind of deconstruct or really kind of pull apart and challenge different ideas, different thinking is also really important. But I think the number one thing for me, and maybe something that doesn't get spoken about enough actually, is like being a good communicator. Like 50% of this industry, I'll never forget in my first interview for like a job in the creative industry, the woman who was interviewing me was just like, to be honest, Will, 50% of this job is about being a good communicator. And I didn't quite understand what she meant at the time. And she was like, the other 50% is just learning the jargon. You know, you don't have to have a marketing degree to be able to work in the industry. But over time, I've kind of understood, like, communication is key, like how you interact with teammates, how you write an email. Like, if you think about advertising, like, that is communicating ideas, how you express yourself. So like communication, how you're able to interact and engage with people, whether that's your team, your clients or an audience, is super important. I'd say that's the main one.